Hello and welcome to This is 65. My name is Erin Ackenheil and I own Blackpoint Insurance. At Blackpoint, we help Medicare beneficiaries learn about the A, B, C's, and D's of Medicare and everything about it in terms of approaching Medicare eligibility. But we're the ones who benefit from learning a ton along the way from the awesome and outstanding people that we meet through the process. They're entrepreneurs, they're side hustlers, they're people in their encore careers, they're spiritual leaders and authors. They're bringing dynamic stories and information out to the masses. And we're so excited to get the opportunity to introduce them to you. Today's guest is awesome. I've been knowing Carsten for a while. I've been on his email list for a couple years now, and I love him as a person. And I'm so glad to celebrate with him and bring him onto the show today. Carsten is an entrepreneur and he's a spiritual leader, and he really combines his talents in business. He owns the company Love Life Yoga. He really uses that as his champion for a lot of the work that he's provided. He's also a spiritual leader currently at the Richmond East Bay, of the Unity of Richmond East Bay, and he'll tell us a lot about that today. He's a holistic mentor, an energy worker. He's an inspirational guide. You're going to love Carsten as much as I do. On top of that, I learned something new about Carsten recently. He's also a writer, an actor, director, and producer, and he's putting together his own show. Apparently, we're at least going to get a preview in the fall, and we get to hear a little bit about that today. And you'll want to get on Carsten's email blast so you can get more information about all his upcoming performances. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Carsten Spencer. Welcome, Carsten.
Hi, Erin. Great to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining today. I've been really wanting to get you onto the show for a while. You do so many cool things out there in the world, and you are just sort of the epitome of calm, nice energy. I think whenever you meet me, you're like, "Can you calm down? Just relax, because it's good, right?" So we'll be the yin and the yang today as we meet here. So I just wanted you kind of to just kick everything off, Carsten, if you wouldn't mind. Tell everybody a little bit about your background. I mean, what makes a spiritual leader? How did you get there? And what's your story?
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's partly what this play that I've been working on really for a long part of my life. Um, and of course, the play that I'm working on, I joked with my sister recently. She said, "What's the title?" I said, "Oh, well, I'm thinking of changing it to Cardless Cardleby." Now, not everyone is going to get that, but Nicholas Nickleby was like a day long Broadway show that, I think it was like 8 hours long. And so
So we're in for it.
when you ask, go ahead.
We're in for a treat when this comes out, right?
Right. But when you ask, tell me about your story, then it's kind of like, oh boy, it's a big story. um, but I think a lot of what drew me into my own healing work and my work as a spiritual leader is my what I will call semi-functional childhood. I don't believe in dysfunctional childhoods, because as long as we're still here and we're able to talk, our childhood did what it needed to do. But I think just like everyone, we have our own traumas and dramas as children. I believe our parents give us everything they have, the good and the bad. And the bad isn't really bad. It's the karmic stuff. It's, they give us what they learned, but we are a what I tell my clients to realize is that we are at the crest of a wave that has been building through our ancestors. So I invite them to visualize, and it might be helpful for you and whoever's listening now to visualize. Close your eyes for a minute and visualize yourself sitting there, and then beneath you is mom and dad. Beneath them is the four grandparents. Beneath them is the eight great grandparents. On and on and on and on. And science tells us, because they're discovering new things all the time, that what they used to think was our junk DNA is actually, because they've been studying it now for a number of years, it's actually beginning to blossom, and they realize it's the DNA that really is all about our evolution. And all that energy from our past ancestors, we hold in our DNA, the experiences and everything.
Wow.
So but when you talk about my journey, a lot of it had to do with my own healing with, trying to find my way. I had some physical injuries with my foot when I was about 30, which is my Saturn return. So, doing this work for many years with many clients, I've realized that, life and the journey through life has a purpose, and we go through these different cycles. And if you can understand the cycles of what we move through, it's much easier to be in the present moment and accept what's happening now and begin to embrace what I call, as a very important spiritual concept for me, is embracing the not knowing.
That's
Because
so hard.
well, it's hard because the first Saturn cycle is all about being a problem solver. We come in as these pure beings who know that on one level we're eternal beings, and we're coming into these bodies for an experience, to learn, to grow, to activate certain parts of ourselves. But then we're taught, and I believe that it's a safe universe, which is can be a difficult concept for a lot of people because there's a lot of scary stuff that's going on out there.
Right.
But the truth is, if we really are eternal beings, which is what so many of the spiritual teachers have always taught us, and I think we understand that on one level, because when we go to sleep and we go into the dream world, our body is lying there sleeping, but our consciousness is active, moving around in these other dimensions. And I believe that our dream world is, a part of who we really are.
Yeah.
But that first Saturn cycle, it's a problem solver cycle. We come in with these pure beings, believing that we're just here for the adventure and fun and enjoy it. But then we're taught by our parents and society, no, it's not safe. You've got to prove yourself. You've got to fit in, all these different things. And it's helpful because it allows us to create what I call our ego, or our public personality, so we can fit in and, do what we need to do. But that first cycle, we're really taking on all the information about who we are and who we need to be from our family of origin, from our society. And so we get a lot of stuff that's not really authentically what we came here to share with the world. Then the
Right.
planet Saturn comes around. And I believe Saturn, this is what the astrologists tell us, it rules our physical life: money, career, relationships, health, living situation, all the things that have a tendency to push our buttons, right?
100%.
And then once we pass that 29th year, because that's about the full orbit of Saturn, we've completed that karmic cycle, the problem solver cycle. We figured out who we need to be and a general idea of what's going on out there. And then new energies start to blossom from our DNA, and we move from the problem solver into the spiritual adventurer or the creative
Right.
adventurer. And the reason these Saturn cycles are long is because it takes a while for us to navigate what did I get from my family that is authentically me, or else is something that can add to who I am, and what was just BS that's their old stuff that I can let go of. And so we move through
It
that
takes time. It
cycle.
takes time
Yeah.
to get through that. So when you had this sort of self journey beginning, Karsten, I mean, did you when you were going through this and experiencing this kind of prior to be able to pass the word on to others, what did you do to dig deep? Was there education, training?
Well,
How did you learn
I
all
think
this?
I started by when stuff would be tough in my childhood, family stuff would be crazy. My brother would beat me up. Whatever, my parents divorced, a lot of crazy stuff happened. My escape was nature. I would escape into nature and connect with nature. So that led me to my body, and I had a lot of physical stuff going on when I was younger, especially when I started to move through my teens into my 20s. And so I learned to start listening to my body. I reached out and looked at health food, what's going on here. And then I found yoga. Someone shared yoga with me. And then I also I don't know if anyone is old enough. Well, I guess on this podcast, there might be.
I think you're in a good audience here, Karsten.
Well, those of you who remember uh, uh, Pat, I forget what her last name was, but she was the hip hypnotist. And she had a show on TV, and you could actually go down. She would give not seminars, but it was actually like a nightclub act that she would do down in Hollywood. And I decided I wanted to go see the nightclub act, and I stayed afterwards because she would invite people to, and she would give a little process where she'd help you. She'd show you how to bring yourself into a hypnotic state, and that was really a big shift for me because I realized, oh, I actually have can have dominion over my own thoughts and my own energy. And then the yoga brought me to, to trust my breathing.
Right.
And then when I reached my Saturn return, it looked like you might have had a question there.
Well, I was just thinking, how did that, all that kind of learning and so forth, how did that connect with you when you had this Saturn return? And have you been through more than one, do you think?
Oh,
In
plenty.
terms of
Well, it's every 29 years, and that's what I would share. When I came to my first Saturn return at 25, I moved from Southern California to New York because I wanted to follow my dreams. When I was 18 years old, instead of going to my high school graduation, because after my parents divorced in junior high, and you can see it when I look back, and when I went back to college in my 30s, I requested my transcripts, and I saw, oh, A's and B's, A's and B's, parents divorce and separation, C's, D's, and F's, C's, D's, and F's. And
has a
so,
direct effect.
right, you can really see how there was just this thing that went on there. And so, anyway, back to the fun story. Instead of going to my high school graduation, because I just wasn't interested, I just stopped going to school. I would ditch a lot. And then my friend had invited me. He said, "Let's go see Diana Ross in Las Vegas." And I said, "Absolutely. I'd much
Perfect.
rather
Thank
do
you.
that
Oh,
than
so
sit
fun.
through a graduation ceremony." So we went to Las Vegas, and we were sitting up close, and I was clapping my hands and snapping. And at that point, my favorite show was Soul Train.
Uh-huh.
And we used to, whenever we go
You
to
had all the
parties,
moves. So you had the moves. You were right there. I love it.
and so I was snapping, and she came out singing Love Hangover, and she looked at me and said, "Come on up on stage and
Are you
dance."
serious? Oh my gosh.
So I jumped up. I'm doing the bump with her. I'm doing the robot. And she was like, "Whoa, this white boy can really dance." And so she literally, it was like she dedicated the rest of the concert to me. And at the end, when she's singing theme from Mahogany, the line is, "Do you know where you're going to? How sad the answers to that question might be." Well, she took off her beautiful silk scarf and she handed it to me, and she changed the words. She said, "Do you know where you're going to? How good the answers to those questions could be." And she gave me her scarf.
What an
And
experience. That's incredible.
well, and it continued because I was a big Diana Ross groupie at that point. So whenever she came to town, or whenever she was playing Las Vegas, we would go and see her, and she would recognize me in the audience and call me up to dance with her. So I must have
Every
danced with
time.
her.
Amazing.
Yeah, I must have danced with her at least 15 times.
Oh my gosh.
And the best time was years later after I'd moved to New York, and I hadn't been able to follow her and see because I had to actually go and make a living, try to figure out what the heck
Eventually,
I
you
was
couldn't
I
just
was
chase
going to
Diana
do.
around. You had to do
Right.
something else.
Right. But part of the reason I moved to New York, because it was her dancers that we met in the casino after the show, that came up and talked to me. They said, "Hey, where do you take dance class? What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I've never taken class." And they said, "Well, you should go, and this is the studio you should go to." So they really helped me get involved with that. And then I moved to New York, and then I went to see Diana Ross after a number of years. She was playing at an outside venue out by the piers. And she always likes to come out into the audience and like connect with the audience. So she came out and she looked and she recognized me, but then she kind of gave me the cold shoulder and looked away. And I think it was because, where have you been? You were a big
Exactly. You were
fan.
supposed to follow me around for years here. What happened?
Exactly. And so she walked down the aisle and continued singing her song. And then she walked back and stopped next to me and looked down. And then she held out her hand for me, and we slow danced for like a minute. And it
Oh.
was just heaven.
Oh my
So,
gosh, the experience. I love it. That is an amazing story. I don't think many people have that one to tell. That's pretty good, Carsten. I love it. Oh my goodness. So you talked earlier, Carsten, just about how you have clients and you talk to your clients about all these different evolutions and the Saturns and the different experiences that you've had. What's it like to be a client of yours? Like, how do people connect with you? And then what's your process?
well, you can check out my website, carstenspencer.com, but I have to say my website's not totally up to date, but you can get a general idea, because my work is always evolving, because life evolves and your consciousness evolves. Um, But, just reach out to me and set up a session. I've been working a lot lately with a lot of my regular clients and new clients around relationship issues because, my view is relationships always come into your life to help you grow. And especially those soulmate relationships, the one that you meet and you go, oh yeah, this is for me. And then you start finding out more going, well, why am I attracted to this person?
Right, exactly. Help me
And so
evaluate this.
so the most simplest thing I can say for anyone in a relationship or wants to help, get the most out of a relationship is the biggest disservice you can do to someone who shows up in your life and they trigger all that stuff like, wow, this is my soulmate stuff, is stop trying to match them with your idea of a relationship in your head. They came in to show you what relationships are really about because they're going to push your buttons because we all have them. And because our chakras are very active and we really communicate much more energetically than we do intellectually.
Right.
We're taught that the intellect is what it's about, and you have to understand it up here. But I have to say the gift of, and I'm not sure where I got it. Maybe it's my Aquariusness, I don't know. But I've always trusted my I know partly what it is. It's when my family fell apart and I realized, gee, these adults who are supposed to know what's going on are
Have no idea,
completely
no
lost,
clue.
right?
Right.
So I had to depend on my own stuff, my own intuition. And so often it was taking me in the opposite way than society told you where you were supposed to go. But, for me, it always worked because it allowed me to have a very different life and have all these different experiences like Diana Ross or like, because you asked me before about my first Saturn return. I had a physical injury. My foot suddenly started acting up and I was limping. I was on crutches for almost a year and I'd been to a number of doctors who really weren't able to help at all. And I have never trusted medical, you know,
That's not your thing.
the medical community very much. I'd always trusted on nutrition and, the yoga, all those things. And so after the last doctor I went to see suggested a bone scan, I said, well, what's that about? He said, well, we just want to make sure you don't have bone cancer. And I left the office, headed for the place that was going to give me the bone scan. And I thought, I'm looking for something I don't want to find. And I knew from my spiritual teachings that what you focus on and what you're looking at, you draw into your life. So I tore up the thing. I had been reading Shirley MacLaine's book, which is called Dancing in the Light, which is about her time in New Mexico doing past life regression. So I went home, and that was before you had the internet or anything. So I called 411 and asked for the information for the Light Institute and booked my 4-day, deep past life regression process and connected with my higher power, which was amazing. Actually remembered and experienced a number of past lives. Maybe the most powerful one was when I died on the battlefield in what I
Wow.
believe was Gettysburg. It was definitely the Civil War. Um, and really was able to not just have it as a concept, but experience that we are beyond these physical bodies, that they're just a stopping point for our soul. So that was really, really powerful for me. And that's so much of what led eventually to my teaching. I soon began teaching yoga, which I did for years, and then it just began to expand into other areas.
Right. Well, I just want to remind everybody here, if you have a relationship question you want to work through, or you need some guidance from a spiritual leader, Carsten is fantastic. I would recommend you book a session with him. He mentioned his website, but he also told me that he's very accessible. So if you just want to email him at carstenspencer@hotmail.com. There's also an option you can get on his email blast list and hear about everything he's doing. He's got all kinds of good stuff going on. But if you'd also like to book a consult, this is a great way to reach Carsten directly. So carstenspencer@hotmail.com, super accessible, easy to work with. So
And you can also see me via Zoom. We've had a little bit of Zoom challenge, but I think we got it fixed. Every Sunday morning at 11, and all that information, I send out a newsletter each week with the link. So get on my newsletter list, and you can connect with me through Unity of Richmond East Bay. And if you're living in the San Francisco East Bay area, come visit us on a Sunday. It's wonderful. It's a largely African American church. We're putting our choir together, which has been wonderful. We're going to be doing a special service the Sunday after Valentine's Day, singing some wonderful songs. We're doing The Greatest Love of All, and the choir's been sounding great. So
That's so crazy that you just said The Greatest Love of All, because I just heard that song this morning and I hadn't heard it in a long time. And I was just bellowing that song out. I want to be part of the choir.
well, you can join us. The good thing about our choir, because I've been a participant in many spiritual organizations and churches in the past, and one of the things that I never really liked was, even though they were a church and very accepting, some of the choirs I've been in, they were like really strict, and are you getting the harmony right and whatever. And I just decided, when we decided to bring back the choir, once I started with this church, that if you want to sing, just show up and sing. Even if you feel you can't sing, move your lips or whatever, because it's got to be much more about fun, especially a church
Exactly.
choir,
And
than having to be
celebration
perfect,
and
right?
joy.
And that's
I
so
love
much
it.
about my spiritual beliefs, is life's meant to be fun. We're not here to be perfect.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your church. So it's called Unity.
Unity is not universal. And
Uh-huh.
what I want to say to people who perhaps have some church or religious wounds, which I certainly had some. That's a lot what my play is about, because my parents sent me to Catholic school for my first couple of years, and so I got a lot of wounding, because there's a lot of judgment about sin and all that stuff. One of the nuns who caught me biting my nails one day said I was a cannibal and I was going to go to hell because I was biting my nails.
My
And so,
God.
but in Unity, we don't believe in sin. Our one tenet is there's one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life, God the good, omnipotent. And we believe that Christ was a divine teacher who came to share his journey, because he evolved through his journey in life. But we also talk about Buddha, and also we take information from all sorts of spiritual
It
places.
sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
If people want to come see you, and obviously they can tune in, right, based on getting on
Yes.
your email list. But if they want to come see you in person, where is it located?
The church is at, let me see if I can remember, 328. I'm getting wrong. No, it's 351 28th Street.
351 28th Street in
28th Street.
Richmond.
And you just put Unity of Richmond East Bay, and it will come right up on your
All
computer.
right.
Yeah.
So Unity of Richmond East Bay, and you'll find it at 351 28th Street, Richmond. And Carsten is pretty much live every Sunday at 11, and he streams it. So if you get on his email list, you can listen that way. But if you happen to be in the Bay Area like I am, I want to come out and check it out, Carsten. That sounds
Good.
awesome.
Yeah,
So
come sing with us.
that would be so fun. Yeah. I don't know. You might regret that decision, but I would love to try it. It'd
Never,
be so fun. And
never,
sounds great.
never.
So
And I do also see clients via Zoom and one-on-one. I do an energetic bodywork technique where it's actually a hands-on technique. And I also work with my voice, and I work with crystals. This has to do with the chakras. When my mom was sick, she had a liver cancer, a slow-growing liver cancer. And when it started to get towards the end, I had just been laid off from a job I'd had for a long time. So sort of, the universe was saying, this is what's next for you. Your mom's sick. Your brother and sister probably couldn't handle dealing with her, because my mom was a challenge. So when I went out to take care of her, the first month I was there, I ran into this Native American healer who worked with his voice, and he worked with people who were terminally ill. So he did a number of sessions with her, and her cancer's numbers, which had been going up consistently for the 4 years that she'd had it, dropped in half after a month.
wow, that's
And her
unbelievable.
and her doctor walked in after we'd taken the test, and he said, have you been doing anything different? And she started to shake her head because she really kind of poo-pooed the fact that I was
Uh-huh.
having her work with this spiritual healer, would come in and just kind of scream into her body, "Oh!" And then he would run to the sink and spit out, like these little things of blood. And he said, "That's your mom's cancer." It was quite amazing. And I sat in the room
What
with
an
her for most of the
experience. That's
session.
unreal. Yeah.
Well, his vibration, what it felt like was someone was scrubbing the inside of my brain with a Brillo pad. It wasn't painful, but you could definitely feel whatever was going on with his tone there was something
Right.
really happening. And then my mom, and then, the doctor came in and said, "What have you been doing?" And she kind of sheepishly said, "Well, my son got me in touch with this, sound healer." And the medical doctor said, "Well, keep it up because your numbers have dropped in half."
That's amazing. That's
And
incredible. And I just feel like, it's so interesting when you're telling your different stories, Karsten. Like, obviously, you're a very spiritual person. You've evolved so much through the years, but you just seem to attract all these people who bring other things to the table that just keep expanding your universe on it, right? I mean, it's just pretty cool.
Well, and I think that's really what it's about. And then this is what a lot of my clients tell me. They'll come for a session, they won't really know what it's about, but they'll say after it left, things changed in my life. Things was different because when we clear our energy, we start to key into our spiritual energy, because the things that block us from having a joyful, creative, fun, you know, life with a lot of different adventures is the stuff we get programmed with early on, that life's not safe, that, oh, I'm this way, oh, I'm not smart, I'm not this. Talking about the voice, it's interesting because from the time I was really young, I loved to sing. And what lots of times when guests would come over, me and my sister would put on My Fair Lady, or what one of the musical records that my parents had brought home, and perform for the group. But my father was always like, "Oh, Cardi, you're flat," or "Cardi, and you're sharp." But my sister always had the good voice, so I got this message: "Oh, my voice isn't good." And then when I took voice lessons later in life, when I was living with my mom, sort of long after the divorce, the one line that I always remember, she said, "Well, if you don't have an arm, you don't try to pitch." So in other words, she once again said, "You don't have a very good voice."
Shutting people down over and over again.
Yes, yes. And it wasn't until after and I still always sang all my life, but I was very insecure about it. And that insecurity really kept my voice from coming out fully. And then after I worked with Emmanuel, after my mom passed, interesting thing is, as soon as my mom saw that her numbers were going down, she found any excuse not to see the healer anymore. And he was the one that told me, he said, "Your mom is ready to go. I've given her
Right.
some more time," which he did. He gave her like 6 more months.
Right.
Um,
But she's
but
done.
said, "But you have to let go." But in the 6 months, I really gave her enough time to clear up some of the karma with you and your brother, which also I could see how it happened.
Right.
But then he came back into my life a number of years later, and at that point, I was then starting to do my hands-on energy work, and
Mhm.
I had a lot of clients, and I hadn't done the toning work except for a few clients who encouraged me to, because they were clients that I had described what had happened with my mom, and they said, "Well, show me what happened." So I kind of pretended to do the sounds, and a number of my clients said, "Wow, when you made that sound, I really felt it in my body, and
Interesting.
your hands got warm." So then when the healer came back into my life, he said, "Well, let's teach it." I used to work with him when he would work with some of his terminal clients, and we'd also go into the redwood forest, and as he put it, teach me to listen, and we would tone and make the sounds
Right.
together. I don't do the lower deep tone, like he sounds like an opera singer, but I do a lot of the higher tones. But in the process, I've been able to connect it with my lower voice, and my singing voice has blossomed through that process because it
That's
allowed me to
incredible.
begin to
And I love
trust.
that you connected in nature to do that. So that's right back to your roots on that.
Yes,
So,
yes.
all right, Karsten, you got to tell me about the play. What's coming out? What's it about? Tell me everything.
It's interesting because during the pandemic, I found this play that I had written, probably 20 years ago. I'd forgotten I had written it, but I found this old computer that I thought, that had broken. It wasn't working. And instead of throwing it out, I thought, well, let me plug it in one more time to see what happens. I plugged it in and everything popped up and all this old stuff. And I saw this play deep in the heart of Texas. What was that about? And I'd written this play about a Catholic priest who was assigned to death row in Texas, and he falls in love with one of the people scheduled to be killed.
Oh,
And as I was reading through it, I was laughing at certain parts. At certain parts, I had tears in my eyes, and I kept forgetting that I had written it. So
uh-huh.
I reached out and put this cast together, and we did a couple of stage reading. Got a lot of positive feedback, and that led me to find this other, because part of getting up and doing it with my cast, because I of course cast myself in the starring role.
Of
But as I
course.
did it, I realized on one level I was kind of too old to do it, and on another level, because it's kind of a heavy play, I thought to myself, because at this point in my life, I'm really clear. I turned 70 last month, and so at this point in my life, I'm really clear
Looking
about.
good, by the way.
Thank you. And I've had no work. Well, I had a little bit of lift here.
Uh, that's nothing by today's standards. That's good stuff.
Well, and my doctor recommended it because my peripheral vision was getting affected, so they just did what they needed to do.
Yeah.
And that's the gift of working with Erin and seeing what she can do to get, because I did have to pay for the lenses, which made me be able, because I don't have to wear glasses anymore because of the
That's
lenses.
amazing.
But everything else I've had done through you, and the insurance I've gotten through you has been absolutely free, which has been wonderful.
Amazing. I
Very
love
little out
that.
of pocket stuff has been great.
So
So
tell me more. So did you rename that original play "The Letting the Lord Leave Me," or did it morph into something different here?
no, what I was going to say is, when I thought about putting my energy into getting that play produced or putting it up, I thought to myself, I don't really want to get up every night and go through this process. So I went into my meditation. I said, well, what do I want to do? And then I had also found this other play that I had written. I did a piece of it uh, after my mom died, when I was still living down south. Um, but I kind and with the hopes that, this one, the one that we're talking about now, it's an autobiography. I call it a memoir play. It's very much my life story, although there's a lot of poetic license I take,
Uh-huh.
as we move through. But I did a big part of it, like really was the section about me going out and taking care of my mom. Uh, but I alienated all the people who worked in that theater, who I was hoping to say, "Oh, we want to produce this," because at that point I was working at a pot dispensary, and all the people from the pot dispensary showed up to watch the show, and during intermission they were all smoking pot in the parking lot. And so, and then the other thing was, I didn't let them know that there was a nude scene at the end of
Oh
towards
gosh.
the end of the play, which was,
Drugs and nudity, you're out of control, Carsten.
it was not gratuitous. It was fit right into the plot, and I got a standing ovation for the nude scene.
Oh wow, amazing. Oh my
but
goodness.
but the powers that be at the theater were not happy about it. So, and that sort of sullied me for that whole play. But then when I found it again, and then after I did that other play, I realized, what do I want to do? What would be fun for me to do? And so I took that and began sort of expanding it. And rather than having it be a one-man show, since I had that, the actors that worked on the previous play, they all said, well, what do you want to do? We really want to work with you. We love your writing. What are you doing next? So we started reading through it at the beginning of the year, and they show up every Thursday, and we've really, it's coming together. So that's what it's about. But it starts the opening prologue, as I call it, with me sitting on one of the rings of Saturn with my oversoul, him telling me it's time to reincarnate and be a human for the first time. So that's how it starts, and then it goes through my childhood into stuff. And I haven't gotten to the third act, although I've written certain parts about it. But I think it's going to end, with my adulthood.
Well, I can't wait to see it. So
And it's very musical, a lot of dance, a lot of singing, and it's fun.
sounds like it's going to be awesome. Letting the
Yeah.
Lord lead me. I got a crush on Jesus. I can't wait to see it. Hopefully, a preview in the fall. And
Yes.
please be sure to get on Karsten's email list. Email him at karstenspencer@hotmail.com. You can go and listen in to hear Karsten on Sundays at 11 or go see him personally. And then when the play comes out in the fall, he's going to let us know where we can go see it and how we can get tickets. So I'm pretty darn excited about that.
Exactly, and if you wanna work with me, I'm glad to give a special discount to people. Just mention that you found me through Aaron's podcast, and I'll give you a special price for your first session.
Thanks, Karsten.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you heard it here, special discount. So, as we just kind of get ready to wrap, Karsten, just a couple things. I mean, I think, you've been through a lot and all these different experiences that kind of led you to where you are. And then you've made all these connection points along the way. But if you were to go back, I don't know how far you would go back, whether you go to those sort of teenage years when your family was in transition or you go into your early 20s or what have you. What phase in life would you go back to, and what would you say to yourself if you could at this point, based on all the wisdom you've grown through the years?
Well, it's interesting because that was one of your questions that you sort of prepare for this, and I remember the question was, what would you tell your inner child or whatever if you could go back? And the first thing that popped up into my mind immediately, which is kind of where I've been led to through my journey, is I wouldn't tell my inner child anything. I'd ask what he has to tell me.
Wow.
Because that so much of my journey has been about reclaiming that inner child and trusting him and reparenting him. Because, if you've made it to this point in life, as I have, and I have to say, I just can't believe 70. Oh my God, I'm here. Because I still feel like a teenager. And finally, I feel like a teenager who doesn't have all this heaviness on me. It's like it's really happening. But as I move through my life, so much of it has been reconnecting with that inner child, trusting that thing, and also owning at this point in my life. And that's the other thing, the second Saturn return that happened around 58. I really feel as though I've stepped into myself in a fuller way. And I tell my clients this and my partner this all the time. I feel stronger, more grounded in my body, more energy, more alive than I ever have in my life. And so I'm ready. When I had my birthday last year, I said I'm ready for another 70.
Sounds
as
good, right? So
as well as
I love it.
yeah.
Carson, I love working with you. You've got such great energy. You're such a good person and so genuine to be around. So I just want to appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today. You were incredible. Can't wait
Well,
for this
thank
to
you.
air. And if you leave any parting words for everybody out there, what would you say?
Um, what if nothing's wrong? What if life is always working in your favor? And what might that look like? Whenever life comes up and triggers you, and your triggers are wonderful, instead of jumping into the old fixer, which is your first Saturn cycle, recognize you're a problem solver. And what if the universe is working in your favor? So you want to feel the feelings around it, because lots of times life comes up to trigger us, to help us feel and clear those feelings. But we're trained that an uncomfortable feeling, something's wrong. If you confront that something's wrong and stay open, things begin to shift, things begin to change, and becomes much simpler.
Great advice. And whatever you're doing, I want to do some of that. So sounds good. So thank you so much, Karsten, for
You're
bringing this to our
welcome.
group. You're amazing. And we'll talk real soon. Have a great day.
Wonderful. Bye bye.